This year's second semifinal game in the college football playoff is a rematch of last year's title game as the Alabama Crimson Tide goes to New Orleans to take on the top-seeded Clemson Tigers. Last year's game was an instant classic, and Alabama is in search of revenge after the Tigers won the 35-31 thriller. Alabama had to plead its case and sweat in an Ohio State Big Ten championship victory to get here, but the Crimson Tide are in the college football playoff and are the favorite over the number one seed. Alabama opened at -1.5, but is now laying -3 for the Allstate Sugar Bowl in the Big Easy. The College Football Playoff Committee sent a pretty strong message that it's not okay to lose to Iowa by 31 points, which is why we're talking about Alabama here instead of Ohio State. The Crimson Tide were nowhere near as dominant this season as they were last season, with a 10-4-1 against the spread mark. Alabama went 11-1 straight up and just 5-7 against the spread. The downtime should certainly help an Alabama team that did not look good down the stretch with the loss to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, a very close call against Mississippi State, and an uninspired 24-10 win over LSU. Alabama is the team that Clemson did not want to play. The Tigers shut out Ohio State 31-0 in the semifinal last year. They beat Alabama and outgained Alabama in the national championship, but this is still the most dangerous team in the country. Dual-threat quarterback Jalen Hurts posted a 50-1 touchdown-interception ratio and was the second leading rusher with 768 yards on 137 carries. The Alabama offense was actually more explosive this season under first-year head coach Brian DeBoer than last year's OC Lane Kiffin. The Crimson Tide went from 6.5 yards per play to 6.9 yards per play. Alabama threw the ball a lot less this season with just 276 pass attempts against 531 carries. Overall, Alabama ran fewer plays this season, but was a more efficient group. Damian Harris rushed for 8.2 yards per pop, while Bo Scarborough regressed a bit with just 5.1 yards per carry. We often talk about Alabama simply replacing one 5-star with another, but some injuries on the offensive line and losses to the NFL really did seem to create some problems in some of the team's bigger games. That merits watching here against a Clemson defensive line that could very well be the best in the country. Per usual, Alabama's defense was basically impenetrable. The Crimson Tide allowed just 5.5 yards per pass attempt and just 4.04 yards per play overall. That was the best mark in the NCAA by .014 yards per play. The biggest knock against Alabama in terms of the College Football Playoff Committee's decision was the strength of schedule, and it does make sense. The SEC West was weaker this season. Alabama avoided Georgia and Florida State was a shell of what it generally is. Because Alabama also avoided Missouri, the Crimson Tide faced only 3 offenses in the top 40 in yards per play: Colorado State, Ole Miss, and Auburn. Colorado State had 391 yards and 23 points. Ole Miss got obliterated, but Auburn won and moved the ball with ease. Alabama now has time to get healthy, and the Tide should be in good shape by the time the game rolls around. The loss of Sean Dion Hamilton was a big deal, and Minkah Fitzpatrick has been dealing with a hamstring injury. But Alabama, despite being the number 4 seed, is still the favorite to win the college football playoff. The Clemson Tigers ride into this game on a high, but the Tigers really leveled off in the middle of the season with struggles against Wake Forest, Syracuse, and North Carolina State. The Tigers removed all doubt early and often against Miami in a 38-3 win that propelled Clemson to the top seed with a 12-1 record. The Tigers are 8-3-2 against the spread, depending on the numbers you've gotten over the course of the year. The Clemson Tigers don't have Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams, Wayne Gallman, Ben Buweri, or Cordrea Tankersley. They do, however, have Dabo Swinney, the best coach in the country bar none. Swinney's recent resume includes wins over Oklahoma twice, Ohio State twice, 3 straight over Florida State, 4 straight over South Carolina, and of course last year's win over Alabama. Brent Venables is the highest paid defensive coordinator in college football for a reason, but Swinney is the best head coach in the sport. He knows how to motivate players with positivity, he's genuine, and that helps players remain focused. That's how you beat guys like Urban Meyer 31-0. That's also how you bounce back a few days later and beat Alabama. Kelly Bryant completed 67.4% of his throws with a 13-6 touchdown interception ratio. Bryant added 11 rushing touchdowns. Clemson, though, was only 34th in yards per carry and 46th in yards per play. Clemson did increase from 4.2 to 4.9 yards per carry with speedsters Travis Etienne and Tavian Fester, who averaged 7.2 and 6.4 yards per carry respectively. Clemson has three great receivers in Deion Kane, Hunter Renfrow, and Ray McLeod. Bryant isn't Watson, but Swinney is the great equalizer in all of this. That being said, Deshaun Watson threw for 420 yards with 3 touchdowns and no picks on this Alabama team in last year's championship game. That safety net is now gone since Bryant is not the passer that Watson is. That means that the defense has to step up once again. Clemson had a top 5 pass defense that only allowed 5.8 yards per attempt, and a top 10 rush defense that allowed just 3.1 yards per carry. Overall, Clemson ranked 4th with 4.29 yards per play against. All of those marks are better than what we saw from Clemson last season, as they allowed 3.7 yards per carry and 4.6 yards per play. The Tigers have become one of those teams that simply reloads instead of rebuilds, particularly on the defensive side. Clemson's defense absolutely shut down Auburn, including 11 sacks, stifled Louisville, and stopped every other team that came in its path. The difference between last year and this year is Deshaun Watson. Kelly Bryant has a lot of potential and upside, but he isn't the same type of thrower as Watson. Clemson's defense is better, but Alabama is unrivaled when it comes to winning defensive battles. The Tide lost last year because they couldn't contain Watson. Alabama ran the ball just fine on Clemson's defense and stopped Clemson's running game. Another play to look at here is the under when totals pop. The 2015 game between these two ended 45-40, and last year's game ended 35-31. The Deshaun Watson dynamic plays a part here as well, and Clemson's defense has more time to prepare for Alabama this time around. We should see a bit of an inflated total based on the first 2 meetings. Our pick and prediction will be for the Alabama Crimson Tide at -3.